Yo! Hey, besties. Hey, besties. What's going on? How y'all doing? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to all the mamas. Mama's gender expansive. If you mother in any kind of a way, today is your day. Happy Mother's Day to you. I hope you feel celebrated and cared for and loved and appreciated for all of the care and the love and the nurturing that you give out. I am on the fence about how we should spend our time today, since I know most people are probably doing things with their mothers. And I know I need to go visit mine. I made a little bouquet for her yesterday because my apartment complex had a nice little event where you could arrange a little flower bouquet. So I arranged one for my mom. Do y'all want to see? I tried to, I just used what was available, but just a cute little, just a little something slight. So I don't know nothing about flower arrangements, but I gave it a little go and just took a few. I thought it was cute or whatever. My mom's not crazy about flowers, but maybe she'll appreciate the fact that I picked them out myself and arranged them. I don't know. She likes effort. She also wants to just get a pedicure. So we'll hook that up as well. And then I sent my grandma some money because my grandma's always sent me money, just in general, little $20 here and there in a card. She always sends me cards. So I sent her a little bit of money. And then these wooden crosses, actually, my grandma's super Christian. And so I was helping a student, older student at work who is a former Air Force vet. But anyway, he's like really into woodworking. He used to teach at UT a woodworking woodshop class or whatever. And he was signing up to take woodshop classes at the school that I work at. And so he is on this mission to like give out a bunch of these wooden crosses. And so he has a whole story behind it that his friend wrote for him. Anyway, they look like this. They're made out of cedar. I was like, yeah. He was like, "Are you a Christian?" I was like, And he was like, "Well, I have a bunch of these crosses. You can give them out. Give them to whoever." And I was like, "Oh, well, I can give it to my grandma. She would love it." So I sent her one and gave her one to give to my aunt as well. And then I have two, one for me and then one for my mom. And maybe it can just be something that connects all of us. So I have them sitting on my altar because I know my ancestors would also probably appreciate it. So, little things, not going all out the way. Because, but little things go a long way. It's the thought that counts, right? Hopefully. So if you are someone who has a weird relationship with your mom, I get it. I'm here for you. I can't be your mom today, but I can be your dad. I'm just kidding. Anyways, child, I guess I do mother a little bit as a first house moon. That's just part of my characteristics. So we can be here and we can all bond today for at least, a couple hours. So I'm debating, segue out of that topic. I'm debating on actually talking about astrology or doing like mini readings for you guys or just chatting. I don't really know what I'm in the mood for. Yesterday I was watching Quinlan Blackwell on YouTube. I was just watching her like go over her digital footprint, and she's a sidereal Capricorn, January 17th. And I was just appreciating like her and then a lot of the other 2001 babies who are really doing their thing. Like she's one of them, Billie Eilish is another one, Pink Panthers is another one. Like I don't know, I think that cohort of people is just really neat, very creative, and unafraid to embrace the cringe in a way. They're a little bit more authentic. I think Willow Smith falls in that group too. So I don't know. I just think they're cool. And I'm like, dang, I want to be like y'all a little bit. They have a Jupiter. A lot of them have Jupiter and Saturn and Taurus. So some of my envy comes from the fact that I have also have Jupiter and Saturn in fixed signs, but Jupiter in Scorpio and Saturn in Aquarius. And I just feel like a lot of us suffer. Like we just were put here to suffer and annoy the adults. So I think we can be funny in our own way, like kind of dry, self-deprecating humor. Um a little bit more introverted or a little bit more shy in some ways and afraid to embrace the cringe and make fun of ourselves a little bit. But I don't know. They just seem a little bit more free in a way that I admire and that I appreciate. And I don't necessarily feel envious of. Like I feel envious of it in the way that I wish I could be that, but not in ways that I want to tear them down. I just want to see them do their thing and vibe with them and see the ways that it allows me to also embrace my cringe as a Leo Mars mixed into the group too. So I don't know. Just some of the things I was thinking about. So I was like, oh, I kind of just want to hang out with my homies on live. I don't really have conclusive thoughts about the astro this week. I have been at work working on Jupiter and Gemini post for Patreon that will be free for people who are actual Patreon subscribers. So whether you're a free member, paid member, that will be available whenever I finish it. And yeah, I just don't really know what to expect. I will say, as someone with Gemini moon in the first house, like I am excited for Jupiter and Gemini. I think we need it. I think just based on some things that I'm observing at work, right? And I'll give you some context. Like we are going through a reorganization in the student affairs department, which is what I work in. And that includes all of the things from us with enrollment management and like recruiting, and then people in testing, people in financial aid and admissions and um, advising and all that stuff. We're going through like a reorganization thing where they're trying to make it less top heavy and more like middle heavy, a little bit more what do they call it, lateral collaboration or something. I don't know. They want us to mix and mingle a bit more, which I think is a great idea. Especially because my department needs to be in conversation with all the other departments. It's like, yeah, sure, fuck yeah. If it makes for a better student experience, then I'm here for it. We could always stand to learn what each other does and like um collaborate a lot more, right? So I was in a training for that last weekend. And anyway, so in our town hall, the chancellor, who's actually from my hometown, he was talking about how a lot of people are resisting this change because, they have this kind of fixed mindset. And I'm sure a lot of our like older colleagues and things like that, older colleagues and stuff, they are used to doing things the way that they've been done for however long they've been done. And I think this chancellor's been with us for at least a year and a half now, because he started around the same time that I started actually. And he's very progressive, very much like here to like change some things and whatever. But anyway, I guess a lot of people are kind of resisting the change, right? Which understandable, especially in the ways that they've kind of described some of this change. It has made it seem like some people might lose their jobs. And it's not that from what I understand, it's not that they'll lose their jobs. It's just their job will change from what it was before. But there is this kind of like possibility that maybe some people do get phased out in the process. I don't fully know. All of that to say though, I've heard the words uncertainty a bunch of times. I've heard the words speculate and um suspicion, and then like the lack of curiosity and wanting to encourage more curiosity. All of the mutable words I've heard described through this process, and it's just been interesting. But I think what kind of made the whole Jupiter and Taurus sextile with Venus and Pisces and Saturn and Pisces click for me, and how we're moving out of that, is this kind of idea that I think before, because people were so used to the way things were, so used to their routines, so used to the relationships with the people that they work with in those departments and the expectations of them in those departments and the expectations of other people and the kind of like they use the word tribalism. I don't love that word because the connotations, but this kind of like groupthink or, just wanting things to stay status quo. And the uncertainty that comes with the fact that things are going to change. Um, and how it requires something different of you in order to change and how you kind of have to change and evolve as a person. It does require a release of control, first of all. Um, some openness to just doing things differently and showing up differently and some openness to other people as well and like what their roles and functions are and I think through as we're shifting into this whole Jupiter and Gemini thing, I think that the anxiety that comes with uncertainty is because we're trying to control the outcome of those changes rather than adapt along the way to the new information that we receive in the process, right? Like I think it's easy to want to hold on to what you've always known and the kind of devil aspect of it where you've gotten really familiar with your circumstances, so even if they suck, at least you know what to expect. I think this is something we've definitely talked about before. It's a lot easier to just suffer in ways that are familiar to you than to open yourself up to new challenges and new experiences that do require something different of you and that do also make you have to face different aspects of yourself that maybe you're not as comfortable facing. But I think the benefit of it being Gemini, in this case, Jupiter and Gemini, is that um, you're not so fixated or fixed or rigid in your self-expression and your perception of yourself and your perception of other people. There's like just this more expansive open-mindedness and curiosity and exploration and I don't know, like I don't know, just a lot of variability, I guess, and kind of being able to pick up things and put them down and transfer into other things and pick that up and put it down. And I don't know, there's just a lot more movement almost. I mean, a lot more mutable, a lot more mutation, a lot more shape shifting, and all of those things that you can do, and you can do it quickly. It's very like versatile, I think is the word I'm looking for. So very versatile, very adaptable, and able to move with change that I think is something that we need not only individually but socially as well. So my hope for this transit is that it does allow for a little bit more of that versatility and adaptability, especially in our thinking and in the ways that we see ourselves. I'm also very tired of all of the gender discourse and relationship discourse and just like identity related discourse. Like, let's please, for the love of God, talk about literally anything else. Enough already. Like, must we every single week talk about how you can't have platonic intimacy without it turning into it being sexual and how he him lesbians and just like everything else. I'm like, literally anything else we should talk about. Like, mayors and judges are getting arrested and deported. Like, please talk about literally anything else other than this nonsense of who should be doing what based on what their genitals are. Like, let's move on. Let's move on. So anyway, that's my opening rant. Let me see what y'all are saying. Uh Desiree and Zeb are here. Happy Sunday. Jim's here as well. Hello. KJ's here. Hello. Lo is here. Hello. Hi to everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Let's yap, period. Yeah, feel free to chime in. Um Jupiter and Saturn and Taurus checking in the pandemic has not made me feel free. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm sure it has not been the case for everybody, depending on other placements in your chart. So, not to generalize, but at least the ones who are, in the spotlight or who are kind of famous, and even my homies and some of you guys, right? Like, you do have a way about you that my Jupiter from across the street recognizes and appreciates. So, you know. Um every time I hear you're in high ed, I get so happy. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing there right now. And I have no idea where it's all going. That's something I really need to think about and consider for myself. But I do kind of like being there. It's been really nice for um me just like seeing people and talking to people because I really have been in my 12th house era for the last 5 years, other than online. And it's just nice to talk to people in real life. Getting real sick of having to wear a mask all the time. I'm gonna keep doing it because the way my brain is set up, I can't not do it. But I'm sick of it. I'm so like, I was venting about this with a friend last night who's also having the same experience of like tired of covering up half of my face when like I am such a facially expressive person, goes with the whole first house moon thing. Um people not being able to see like my expressions and my reactions and just like so much more of my personality that comes through my face. And so it's funny. I was thinking about like, tell me if I'll relate to this. I don't know, this is a weird thing to say, but people always joke about like people who were not considered conventionally attractive in like middle school and high school. You really had to develop a personality because had to really develop a personality and like sense of humor and everything else because, especially for me, like growing up at a PWI, it just was not a lot of people's cup of tea. And, all of the other gender flexible things that I had going on. It was just like I really relied on having a really good personality and like being social and forcing myself to be extroverted and like talk to people and be funny and all that kind of stuff because I couldn't just rely on like my looks. And so now I feel like as an adult wearing a mask at work, even though I do find myself to be more attractive now, especially since transitioning, is like glad to have those skills because I really do. I'm aware of how unapproachable I can be just by default. Like even without masking, I was told a lot that I seemed intimidating or that I seemed kind of closed off or that I seemed just like, it was just Scorpio shit. Like I just was kind of muted in certain ways, like in passing, like just resting bitch face. And so like once you get to talk to me, then the Gemini comes out. I'm like I'm very nice and very friendly and just kind of like open. Unless I'm busy and I just don't feel like it, then I really will kind of gray rock everybody. But in terms of just like being kind of lighthearted and witty and just like chatty with people, if you engage a conversation with me more times than not, I'm going to talk to you and the armor kind of comes down pretty quickly. So even though it seems off-putting, it doesn't take much. And so I have to initiate a lot of conversations being a person who masks, because if I don't, people are going to think I don't want to talk to them. They're going to think that I'm scowling. They're going to think they're going to have all of these feelings about the fact that they can't read me, which going back to the Pisces shit is kind of like, yeah, you can't read me. And I kind of like it that way. And so, yeah, anyway, all of that to say, I really have to have a lot more personality at work, and it drains the fuck out of me by the end of the day. But it's been helpful so far because yeah, it manages to hopefully destigmatize mask wearing for anybody else who's doing it, and also just like, hey, just a normal dude, as far as just a normal guy. um Nothing to be afraid of here, nothing to be concerned about here, just a guy. So yes, yeah, y'all feel me on that. That's something I will give to Jupiter and Taurus is like, okay, fine, I can jingle, as my friend likes to call it, jingling. I can jingle with people and try to be charming despite my appearance. It flex my social capital in other ways, for real, exactly. And like having to use my whole body to communicate as well. If I can't use my face, using my whole body to communicate, like the Gemini moon is really coming forward with this for me. Uh, but also feeling like a lifelong outsider makes you feel like you've got to have a personality that welcomes people. This is tea as fuck. Thank you for this, Jim, because I definitely agree. Like, yeah, absolutely. Feeling like a lifelong outsider, like the disarming aspect of it is very, very much true. You have to kind of you feel like you have to kind of be like, I promise I'm not a threat. And when in reality, at least for me on the Scorpio side, is like, I'm actually feel like you're a threat, but I can't let you know that because then you're gonna have feelings about me having feelings about you, and I don't want to do all that. Hello. So I definitely have to be, but that was what I told them in my interview. I was like, look, I'm aware of the fact that I wear a mask all the time. It's not coming off my face. So there are other things I have to do to seem welcoming and approachable since the name of the job is to be the welcome center. So it's really stretched me in that way, but it has been fun. It's been nice to connect with people again. Been processing that lately, and it can be so freeing to reject that performance. Also true. Also true. I have the world's worst poker face, and masking has been helpful. This is also true. This is also true. Being expressive in fun, positive ways is one thing, but I'm definitely also like judging. Judging and able to hide it at least a little bit better. Um in that regard. Some people. I feel like I do a lot of hand gestures to provide more expression to people as a mask wearer. Also true. Also true. And I know you got Gemini placements too. We tend to be talk with your hands types of people anyway. Helps the brain process, helps things to flow, right? So, one thing I will say about the Jupiter and Gemini ingress chart that I pulled for the US is that it has Leo rising. And I don't know 100% what I think that means yet. Not in the political sense, but just in like the personality of this chart. I obviously biased, but I love Leo and Gemini together. I think it's an excellent sextile. You get a little bit of you get like the charm and the charisma from both. You also get like quick wit and like intellect and versatility, again that word. The different ways that you can flex your mind and communicate with people in a way that's effective and motivating and all that kind of stuff. I'm really into that sextile. And so to see Leo rising with Jupiter and Gemini in the 11th house of that chart is really curious to me. And I hope that it is a sign of us as a nation, us as people, kind of like leaning into more dignity and self respect for ourselves. And also kind of using what do I want to say? I don't know, I guess using those skills to actually like create change and to push back and to like um just stand up, you know? I think that whole square between Leo and Taurus is so like Taurus is going to win every time because at the end of the day like Taurus is determining the power that Leo has. And a lot of times it does look like constantly seeking the validation and the approval of people in power instead of like recognizing your own worth and value and what you have to offer and really like letting that take up space in the world. And so yeah, I just wonder how that will manifest. I'm gonna look into it. We'll unpack it sometime soon. But um yeah, I don't know. I'm really excuse me. Really curious about that and the fact that it's gonna be ruled by Mercury and Aries, which I also like. Relationally, I like Gemini and Aries chopping it up with each other. Of course, I'm again biased. Aries is my 11th house, so of course, a lot of my friends and fellow yappers are going to be Aries, but it's a fun sextile. I think it's very, I mean, you talk about, we said kind of the things we said about versatility and stuff on the Leo side of that. Hey, Samaje. But then like the, there is a different kind mm, there's just a different kind of thing that happens with Aries and Gemini that is very like very dynamic and very expressive again, and explorative, and just animated and lively. It's really fun to me. Like that dynamic is really fun to me. So um very fun, very energetic, and just kind of like ready to go, ready to try whatever. And I think that could also be something very helpful. It's like putting your mind to good use type of energy, like actually executing, not just dreaming up the plan, but actually carrying it out and making something out of your ideas or your beliefs or whatever it is. um and imposing it onto the world, and really creating change, carving out your own path type stuff with both of those placements together. So I kind of like to see that. um yeah. So I don't know. Things that I'm thinking about as I'm kind of parsing through this Jupiter ingress coming up, which is going to be on Wednesday, by the way, at the same time. Well, it's going to be earlier in the day that Jupiter moves into Gemini, and then after that, the sun will enter Taurus. But today, I believe, oh no, tomorrow. Tomorrow, I have a calendar on the wall. Tomorrow, we have the full moon in Libra as well. So very interesting. And if you remember from our conversation last week, that full moon will take place in the first house of the Mercury ingress into Aries chart that we talked about last week. So, yeah, it's helpful and disarming. I agree. Yeah, because it's like people with Leo, like people really are paying attention to you, whether you want them to or not. I think it's the most annoying thing as somebody with Scorpio and Aquarius placements. Like sometimes I just don't want motherfuckers looking at me. Sometimes I wanna disappear. But I can't. Not allowed. They're looking and they're waiting for me to do something. I don't know. And show them the way. I'm like, okay, fine. But like, dang. Be nice to just fade into the background every once in a while. But let me not block my blessings. Because if I didn't have it, y'all wouldn't be here with me. I'd be too scared to come on here and speak my mind. And sometimes I think what I have to say is important. And Leo is real good for that. Leo is real good for I'm important too. Um I don't know. Do y'all have any questions for me? Oh, speaking of Mercury and Aries and Mars and Cancer are going to square this weekend. So if this week feels particularly irritating, that's why. Just prepare yourself for that square building up all week. It's going to be very annoying. Mercury and Mars, when they get to step in, especially when they get to beefing in squares, child, ew, just conflicts. It's like a lot of conflicts, and it's like a version of Mercury retrograde but without the redos. It's just like constant bickering energy to me. Constant bickering, constant what's it called? Little like skirmishes and miscommunications or misspeaking, or sometimes like speaking without thinking type stuff. There's like a little bit of that type of energy. Um so last week felt so overwhelming. Gonna choose silence like Trump and Netanyahu. Yeah, exactly. Yes, those are the vibes. I do not like Mars Mercury stuff. It's just annoying a lot of times. And also anybody who is injury prone, just be mindful of that. Especially driving, biking, working out, whatever it is, just like be mindful of accidents this week as well. Cause again, Mercury Mars get the tussling. And should just yeah. Be intentional with your words, with your actions, with your body. And yeah, don't let your impulses rule you this week, you know. Just kind of find a way to pump the brakes for yourself. Yeah. But yeah, if y'all have any questions, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of being seen I must endure with a Leo Sun Mercury. Yeah, for real. I really feel for the Leo Sun people. Y'all be fine as hell though. Congratulations. My favorite drug. Yes. Leo rising too. Yeah, Leo rising as well, especially Shoal is. Everybody wants to make everything you do about them or like a reflection of them. And you're like, I'm just a mirror. Just a mirror. Just shining a light on the things that you don't want to look at. That's not my problem. Yeah, I don't know. What y'all want to talk about? I'm gonna let y'all choose because I really don't have a lesson plan. You know, I can talk about anything. It don't even have to be about astrology. I just want to know what's going on with y'all. But it can obviously definitely be about astrology. I need to figure out how to do readings again. And if I do them again, it's really giving like it's giving like 2 to 3 times a month. Cuz I can't there's no space in my schedule where I feel like I'm going to want to or have the energy or capacity to do readings once a week indefinitely, you know? Like sometimes I just don't want to. Sometimes I don't want to talk, I don't want to think, especially at the end of the day. And I'm even having trouble getting back into the gym. I'm trying to get to 2 times a week. Just 2. Just 2. And I was going 4 times a week and biking. So I really just want to go 2 times a week. If I can do something, some kind of physical activity 2 times a week, I will be happy. And especially once I can finally replace the tires on my back, on my back, the tires on my bike. Then I would be cool with lifting one day and biking one day or biking multiple days or just whatever, but I'm even struggling to do that. It's hard. We don't need 40-hour work weeks. I'm gonna bitch about that for the rest of my life. 25 hours max, you know? But I don't know. Brother can dream. What y'all saying in here? The Leo Aquarius nodes getting extremely loud and the urge to quit my job and start over is constant. Ooh. Yeah, the nodes. You know what? We should talk about the nodes. I don't have any like fully formed thoughts on the nodes, but let's talk about them anyway. So when I think about the nodes, North Node and South Node, Rahu and Ketu, let's just talk about what the nodes are first of all, and kind of go from there. So I'm still understanding the nodes, and I know depending on who you ask, you're gonna get some kind of a different response. But in practical terms, I think about Rahu, the North Node, as the thing that you are more likely to um move towards and kind of take in and embrace almost in an obsessive or compulsive way, like in the extremes. Like it's an area of your chart that you might feel more of a preoccupation or more of even just like a bias towards, you know, those themes, those house topics, those sign topics, those planet topics. It's this part of you, it's the direction that you're moving in this lifetime and something that you are trying to master in a way. Some of the history, not some of the history, but I guess some of the archetypes that go with Rahu, the North Node, is like a head without a tail. So it just kind of feels like a bottomless pit. You can consume endlessly in that aspect of your life, but you'll never necessarily feel nourished by it because it's a head without a body kind of thing, you know, just this bottomless pit. You want more and more and more, and you never necessarily feel satisfied by it. Um, but it tends to be the place where you're more indulgent in life, right? Whereas K2, which is the tail without the head, is a place where maybe you've experienced a lot of loss, somewhere that you tend to avoid or kind of push back on or push away from. And it's also somewhere where you're experiencing loss or releasing a lot or getting rid of a lot of things. Um, in some ways, a way that I kind of like to think about it is something that you've experienced in a past life or an earlier part of your life, or it could be like a generational habit or wound or trauma or whatever you want to call it. Something that has existed for a very long time in your personal evolution. And because you've dealt with it so much, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that you've mastered it, but it has this like familiar feeling that has a little bit of, I think, like anxiety and dread around it. So it kind of makes you avoid it, makes you push it away, makes you not want to deal with it. And so it also feels dissatisfying, and it also feels sometimes even like demotivating because you just don't want to deal with it. You know, you don't want to turn to face it again. You kind of just want to like leave it where it's at and only focus on this north node thing. But of course, the head and the tail, they go together. You need them both. You're trying to find some kind of balance between the two and a healthy type of relationship with both sides of the process. And so um trying to find ways to kind of heal and recover the things that have been lost or that have been or that you've been struggling with on the K2 side, on the South Node side, can help you feel more fulfillment in the Rahu North Node side. That's at least my interpretation of it. Again, something I still kind of work with. But something that I've noticed since I've actually started like looking at the nodes in people's charts, like whenever I do readings, is I'll think about the nodes as part of your like larger life's like almost like the purpose of all of the other stuff in your chart is to fulfill the balance between your north and your south node. And I don't fully know what that means, but it's like yeah, trying to harness the like gifts of all of your other placements and reconcile with the wounds and different ways to utilize the coping strategies and all that kind of stuff. Like all of that could be towards this higher purpose of this north and south node thing. And I would even add that the modality, like we've kind of described the modes, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, as like the task of the chart. I would even say that maybe the what you're trying to do with the energies of the north and south node is that dominant task in your chart, maybe. So for me, I'll use myself as an example. I have the north and south node in Libra and Aries. I have the north node in Libra in the fifth house, and I have the south node in Aries in the 11th house. And so what I've noticed that look like is from the fifth house perspective, like, yeah, my relationship to gender and sexuality and sexual expression and creativity and other just like skills and talents and performance arts type stuff. Like I really do kind of like I do exist in the fifth house a lot more than I give myself credit for. Cause I do a lot of different things. You know, I don't necessarily capitalize on all the things that I do. But when I was really young, I was an artist, I was a writer, I was a musician, I was an athlete. I did a little bit of everything. Sarah, good to see you. So glad you're here. Yeah. I do a little bit of everything. Like was a very, very creative child. A lot of that because my parents threw me into a lot of stuff. So not even necessarily by choice, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed expressing myself in that way. I enjoyed just playing in that way. And then of course, as I got older, like sexuality and gender and sexual expression is also something that has just kind of always been a part of me. Very like even though I feel cringe talking about it publicly, like on a platform, in one-to-one conversations and relationships and readings and just like with friends, I love talking about sex, love talking about gender stuff, love talking about relationships, like romantic relationships and the erotic and all of those types of things. So it's definitely a place where I find myself overindulging, for lack of a better way to put it. But then on the 11th house side, having Aries there, in the South Node. That's where a lot of my like hyper independence comes in, and where I struggle to really like maintain deeply intimate long-term relationships is actually something that my therapist called me out on Tuesday or on Thursday, especially after the sessions we've been having with my mom. It's like like I let people see, because this is tied to my Mars and Leo, right? I let people see what I want them to see for the most part. And then it is kind of hard to really get close to me. And if you do get close to me, it's hard to stay close to me because my thing, for whatever reason, is that at some point I'm going to move or I'm going to leave. Like I have to go. And that's literally looked like moving. Um, It's literally looked like moving. So in some ways I struggle to form these like really deep and secure attachments with people, because in the back of my mind, I know that at some point life is going to do whatever it does, and mutable angular guy has to like move on and go on to the next thing, whether it's jobs or literally like moving homes, moving towns, moving cities, whatever. And so it's hard for me, one, to like build a dependence on people, which would be nice to have considering my whole fifth house Libra stuff. Um, to actually allow myself to be dependent and reliant on other people besides just myself, and to let other people like carry my things emotionally, just to like let other people in a way that is um I don't know. Yeah, just to like really stay put relationally, and like with friendships especially too, because I have a lot of friendships. I'm one of those people who, because I love meeting people and talking to people and forming relationships, or acquaintanceships I should say, I can have a lot of friends or a lot of acquaintances, or just know a lot of people and engage with a lot of people and be cool with a lot of people. But as far as really being known and seen and felt and understood and held by those relationships, it's tough for me to kind of fully let my guard down in that way. So I really have to work on um forming more secure relationships. And like I think part of it too is because it's the 11th house that deals with, friends and communities and just being communal with other people. Like finding a community, because I don't really have community like that here, and staying in it, but also like being a person who is in that kind of leadership responsibility position. Going back to the whole Mars and Leo in the third house thing, it's like I like the idea of being a community leader type, but I also don't want the responsibility that comes with that, because then I have to be on my P's and Q's in a way that I have to be personally responsible to myself and all of those things. And you have to actually, like, again, let yourself be seen and let yourself, um, get it wrong sometimes. And also having to be like strict dad sometimes, also having to sometimes hurt people's feelings, in certain hurt people's feelings, sometimes having to upset people in service of their own growth type stuff, like all of that. And sometimes I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't really want people looking to me for that. But I inevitably find myself in positions like that everywhere I go, whether it's at work, whether it's, my astro community with you guys, or whatever it is. It's like, because I'm the type of person who's going to march to the beat of my own drum, inevitably that means people are going to want to march with you, and I have to figure out a way to let people march with me without necessarily like um forming a cult. So I don't know, things that I'm kind of thinking about with my own north and south node dynamics, and how the larger theme of my chart being fixed signs having to do with identity and self-preservation and all of that kind of stuff. Like obviously letting myself transition first off was a big part of that process, because I can't do either of those things if I'm not actually being myself. If I'm pretending to be somebody else, or if I'm um just living inauthentically. Like I have to be authentic in order to progress the story of my north and south nodes along. Otherwise, I'm always going to be pretending, and I won't have stable functioning relationships because I'm going to destroy them. Back to the whole south node and Aries thing. Like I'm either going to leave or I'm going to self-destruct. I just like or self-sabotage. I mean, it's just like it's inevitable because I'm going to eventually feel suffocated by the expectation for me to be someone that I'm not, right? So I don't know. Those are things that I think about with North and South Node in general. So all of that to say, um, let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. Oh, you have Venus and Mars in the fifth, period. So yeah, you get it. It's literally the same dynamic. Venus ruled North Node and Mars ruled South Node. Um, and Brie, I did see your question, and we'll talk about that next as well. And yeah, it's also Saturn's influence on my Mars stuff. It's also the literal configuration of my chart, right? Because again, if it's Mars ruled South Node and Venus ruled North Node, but then my Mars and Venus are in a square with each other and both tied up with Saturn, like all of that stuff also factors into it. So for me, it's hard to separate anything. But what I like about the nodes is that I think the nodes can tell you a lot about your kind of life story without even looking at all the rest of the placements just yet. So definitely that. So with us as a nation, as people, feeling the nodes shift into Leo and Aquarius, and I believe it's North Node moving into Aquarius, South Node into Leo. Yeah. Which happens on May 18th, by the way. So that's also next week when I see you guys. The nodes will have shifted into Leo and Aquarius. The thing that we are trying to progress is this fixed sign thing of identity, of sense of self and self-preservation and authenticity, self-acceptance. And I don't know, like I've also seen these themes kind of start to play out. It's really subtle though. Like it's I don't know, in some ways it's like taking the last 3 years of Saturn in Aquarius with the nodes being in for at least a year and a half of those, the nodes being in um Virgo and Pisces, and kind of flipping it to now Saturn in Pisces, the nodes in Leo and Aquarius. And I think, let me think about this for a second, because this is interesting for the Jupiter ingress too. Kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of live, where in order to change like your mind in the way that you think about things and the I don't know, like your truth and your I don't know, truth and trust and like all of those things, they are really tied to identity. And in fact, it's making me think about getting a lot of thoughts at once. So let me back up a little bit to some context for this. Let's get into some neuropsychology. Um so part of the reason that when people threaten, or rather part of the reason why it's so activating when people like push back on your beliefs, or in general, let's just say like belief systems. um didn't that lady used to always say identity is a belief system? Let me think if I still agree with that, or if I would phrase it differently. Identity is a belief system. I mean, maybe, right? Like, I think there's some nuances there, but what I'm thinking about is like when you have a strongly held belief or conviction about something, it is like that belief or that conviction becomes a part of your identity, because in a lot of ways, like you are motivated by your beliefs and your morals and your values, right? Like your character is influenced by your beliefs, the actions you take out in the world, and the way that people know you and see you and understand you. Like I think that's really it. Specifically, the understanding that other people have of you is deeply connected to the beliefs and convictions that you hold as an individual. And so when you're in a situation where you're realizing that your beliefs and your morals and your values are in direct conflict with like the person that you're being, and the way that you're behaving out in the world and in your relationships, like it creates this internal cognitive dissonance that's like, oh, like I'm not being the person that I say I am, or the person that I believe myself to be, or whatever it is. And it kind of it kind of makes anything that's threatening your belief system into a threat. That's like not exactly what I'm trying to say, but it's something along those lines, right? Like if I use like a concrete example, um like people have who call themselves like good Christians, you know, like they really lead with Christianity as a part of their identity. And there's obviously other factors for why Christianity specifically is that way. But even like I have coworkers who are Muslim, right? And so much of their beliefs and their religion and all that kind of stuff is like part of who they are as people. And so when you're in a situation where, let's say, like other people in your religion or belief system are behaving a certain way and everybody notices it, then you kind of take that on as like it starts to feel like an offense towards you. So you either identify with it or you disidentify with it. And I think it can be really tricky because you don't want other people to see your belief system in a certain way, because if they see your belief system in a certain way, then they're seeing you in a particular way. And that to me feels very like Leo, very Leo Aquarius in and of itself, right? It's the same thing we would say about gender, right? And gender and sexuality, like this whole idea of the person that you date being a reflection of you instead of that person being their own selves and you being that person, or like even in families, um, being told that like you represent us whenever you leave this house, like you're a reflection of us kind of thing. So I can see some of this being like an attachment that we have to one, a particular understanding of the world and our politics and our I don't know, our morals and beliefs and culture as a nation, getting kind of into the Pisces stuff, like the ways that we embody that, the ways that we live it, the ways that the meaning that we give to our way of life over here in the States or in the West or whatever you want to call it, and how our identity is kind of born out of, well, in some ways it's born out of that belief system, and in other ways it is a reflection of that belief system. So it makes me wonder, with Aquarius being the Saturn ruled North Node, being ruled by Saturn and Pisces, like what are my first question with Saturn is always like, what are the limits of that? But that feels unclear in this discussion. Like some of it feels like kind of realizing that, not even kind of, I think this has already been happening, realizing that we aren't who we say we are, like as America, as Americans, and all of this kind of long held myth of like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and like all of these unalienable rights that Americans have, you know, and these like freedoms, these freedoms of speech and freedom of press and freedom of religion and freedom of this and that, and like all of these things in this very ancient document. It's not really ancient, I guess it's only a couple hundred years old, but still this like long held document or doctrine that is meant to serve as like a form of protection over us as US citizens. Like all of that is a fucking lie. We already knew this, right? But as time has gone on, you know, we've uncovered more and more how not only is that a lie and it only applies to a certain identity or type of person, but we've also seen that like the stories that we've been told about who we are as a nation, being seen as seeing ourselves as like the good guys who are, um, you know, helping other countries be more democratic and be more this and that. It's like all of that shit was a lie. All of it was a lie. And so the very foundation of our identity as a nation is built on lies and built on deception and built on really like lies of omission, if we're being honest, because they're not explicitly saying that, these rights apply to this specific type of person and not this type of person. It's a lot of history that's been erased in the process. It's been a lot of, um, manipulation of stories and just like straight up, yeah, like withholding the truth. And so we formed this identity of thinking that we're like the land of the free shit, when in reality, like we're not even as free as we think we are. And then you get into this whole like era that we're in currently, where some people have still really bought into this these themes and this idea of like how America is supposed to function and how, um I don't know, like how these systems are supposed to work. And, we always talk about how the system is functioning exactly the way it's supposed to be, but how a lot of people are still kind of being disillusioned in the process to realize, like, oh, I guess this was never really what it was supposed to be. Otherwise, why would they be so heavy against woke culture, right? Woke in the actual sense of realizing like this place is not what they say it is, woke in that sense. Like, yeah, of course that's why they've not only bastardized the word but then made it mean something that it doesn't actually mean. um so yeah, I think that's a lot of this kind of, I don't know if it's a recalibration necessarily, but it's definitely, I think disillusionment is a good word for it. It's a good word for, um Rahu and Aquarius being ruled by Saturn and Pisces, because you really do have to you really do have to disassociate in the sense of, um like disassociate the story that we've been told about this country with the reality of what it actually is, and actually like lean into what's actually going on and what we're actually seeing and what's actually being happening, instead of kind of being, I don't know, manipulated by language in a way. So I don't know. That's something I'm thinking about with that aspect of it. What I think is really interesting is the Leo side, having K2 in Leo, because that changes depending on where the sun is. So really every month. Hmm. That's really interesting actually. Every month the sun is changing the flavor of K2 in that way. Assuming it works that way. I always assume it works that way, but I could be wrong. But it's really changing the flavor of the South Node in Leo every time the sun changes. And I kind of like that because Saturn, this is I keep going into so many different tangents because astrology is so much. But hi Nicolita. Um yeah, like that's kind of cool. It's making me just think about the sun and Saturn's relationship anyway. Whenever it comes to Leo and Aquarius in this sense. And I think I think I said this already. It's way more psychological, those two, like your sense of self, your concept of self, the idea and perception that you have of yourself and of the world around you, and how the sun, as it moves through all 12 houses of the zodiac, all 12 signs of the zodiac throughout the year, your focus and your awareness of what that sign and what that house actually looks like and means to you, it changes every year based on everything else going on in the sky. Like things look differently to you. You notice different things, you realize different things in that area of your life every year because of how the sun is interacting with all of the other planets, not just in your chart, but in the ecosystem, in the current ecosystem. And so in this case, with Saturn in Pisces kind of being the anchor, it's like, yeah, you're kind of realizing all of the lies that have been told to you in a certain area of your life, depending on where the sun is. And um, that would also argue the case that, like, yeah, sometimes we're going to be more resistant to certain truths in certain areas of our lives than other, depending on whatever aspects the sun is making with um Saturn and Pisces. Whoa. I've never thought about that before. We're thinking thoughts that have never been thought today, guys. That's so interesting. Like, especially this year and next year. And then I guess it's this year, next year. Then when do the nodes change again? Oh, yeah. And then by 2027. Is that right? It might be sooner. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. What? Oh, bitch. Hold on. I went too far. Yeah. Do, do, do. So I'm looking at the nodes. Yeah, they'll move into Cancer and Capricorn by the end of 2026. So, um, yeah, so this year and next year, like, we really are confronting the lies told to us and having to reconcile like what that actually means for us depending on where the sun is at any given moment. And then you know how, like, whenever you learn something, like, and all my mutable baddies in the chat, I know y'all know what this is. I know y'all know how this is, but like when you believe something for so long, and then because of the information that you were given at the time, and you do kind of form an identity around that story or that narrative about yourself because that's the information you're responding to and kind of like um I don't know, that you're kind of oriented around. And then you get to a point in your life where you find out that what you were told was either not the full story or was a straight up lie. And then you get the full story and then you realize, like, wow, who would I be today if I would have known this information at the time? Like, I would be a completely different person. Maybe not completely, but I would be a different person today if I would have known this information at the time, or these relationships would have been different if I would have known this at the time, or whatever. And so you kind of have an identity crisis around that because you were responding to a story or a narrative that wasn't even true. And so then you have this moment where you kind of have to, like, you're confronted with being willing to accept the new reality, or to kind of like stick with whatever narrative that you've hardened yourself around, almost like, I don't know, this is really making me think about um oh shit, yeah, that is a big one, Sarah. um totally. I mean, again, using myself as an example, right? And you know what, maybe this is really speaking to, because I've been wanting to talk about the Pisces and Leo um relationship. Pisces is in the 8th house from Leo, and then Leo is in the 6th house from Pisces. So, um, with Pisces, like, things are not what they look like for whatever reason. It's just hard to take stuff at face value. And even though something may look a certain way, that's not what it actually is. And then I think Leo, in some ways, in some ways, Leo is what you see is what you get, but it's also, again, that whole thing of what I want you to see, what I'm choosing to shine light on, or what I'm choosing to project out. It may not always be consciously a conscious choice, but I think for the most part it is because it's the sun. And yeah, I guess that really does speak to the narrative, especially having Pisces in the eighth. Like people talk about the eighth house as being like kind of the underworld and the unknown. It's not the unknown in the same way as the 12th house, but it's this kind of unconscious or like really in the trenches of like your mind kind of house, you know, like all the difficult things that are hard to confront or that are hard to embrace and hard to express kind of live in the eighth house. And so for Leo, it's almost like, yeah, any hidden truths or hidden realities that you're not aware of, you are responding to, and you maybe just don't realize it. Maybe that's part of the whole like um this kind of emperor no clothes thing. Hmm. So yeah, I don't know. There's something here about um I guess that just keeps end up being the theme for today. Like you change with new information. Like you as a person change with new information because so much of how we see ourselves is formed around truth in a way. What's true for us. So when something stops being true for you, like then how does that change who you are? It's gonna be some wild ass eclipses, bro. And our first eclipse, let's look at that. Uh, just such a sleepy boy. Um, yeah, so we have a Leo eclipse. Looks like August 23rd. And that will be with the South Node. So that's a big eclipse. Yeah, pay attention to that one. August 23rd, because I do think if we're having an identity crisis as a nation or as individuals, it's probably because something was revealed to us that some kind of truth was revealed to us that we were not expecting or don't know how to reckon with, or I don't know, some kind of a struggle. That's also going to be after Mars and Virgo opposes Saturn and Pisces for the first time. And that also, I don't want to say it's going to be a nasty transit because I don't know that it'll be nasty, but I don't know. Actually, this is a great segue into Bree's question about summer 2025. So perfect. Love when that happens. Um, so summer 2025 is so I don't say any of this to fearmonger. These are just the words that I'm thinking about. It feels really disorienting. And disorienting because it's mutable madness summer. We'll have Saturn in Pisces, we'll have Jupiter in Gemini, and we'll have Mars in Virgo for about 6 weeks. And them three motherfuckers together, y'all had just heard me talk about my own chart, right? Them three bitches together with Jupiter being on the apex, and the apex meaning like this I don't know how to show y'all this without showing everybody else's chart, so I'm not gonna do it. But Jupiter being the thing breaking up the opposition between Mars and Saturn, it's kind of it's kind of weird because Jupiter is the story. Jupiter is the narrative, right? It's the container that is uh kind of illuminating the patterns and the common themes between all of our experiences and telling a story about it. And we have it in Gemini. And Jupiter doesn't like to be in Gemini. It's not exactly like where Jupiter's trying to be. But because Jupiter is in Gemini instead of Sagittarius, there's again, this openness that's kind of like, or rather than openness, I'll say it's kind of a receiver of information. It's taking in information in a way that I think normally Jupiter is putting out information on the Sagittarius side, thinking of like your preachers and teachers, um, in that sense. But Jupiter and Gemini is really like a receiver of information and kind of an information overload position. And because this is also a Mercury dominant configuration with both Jupiter and Mars being Mercury ruled in different ways, it's like um, on the one hand, you're receiving a lot of information overload, everybody talking at once is what that kind of feels like. And then um Mars and Virgo is trying to do something with the information that is actually um like verifiable and concrete and more objective or more material information. But then you have this issue where what everyone's talking about versus what's objective and verifiable, those two things are at odds, because of the square between Jupiter and Mars and between air and earth. It's like everybody's talking about this thing over here and forming a new narrative about this thing over here, but then there's still all of this evidence and this data um and these studies and whatever it is over here that's also trying to point to something that maybe the people up here talking are kind of missing, or they're struggling. These um both of these sides are kind of struggling to piece together what all of this information means, especially because Saturn is in Pisces over here telling you that you kind of can't trust anything that you hear, right? So I think some of that is just our own resistance to trust whoever, if we're talking about this Leo new moon, we're like struggling to trust whatever people in positions of authority are trying to tell us something, whether that's the truth or more lies. We're skeptical of anybody with the power to speak, basically. But at the same time, maybe people who don't have as much power or as much visibility or as much authority are also trying to speak and maybe tell the truth or not tell the truth or whatever they're doing. And maybe they're saying something that we don't want to hear or something that is in direct conflict with something that we've always believed. And it's like, it's hard to hear and hard to trust as well. So don't really know if we can trust them either. So it feels like just not knowing which way is up to me. And the only other things in the sky that can help us, like I said, are those Leo placements. But at this time, it's actually it's actually Mercury and Venus in Cancer, which is so annoying because Mercury is going to station retrograde, I think, in Leo and move back into Cancer. Let me look. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, no, it's just a Mercury retrograde in Cancer. Okay, well then the good news. Well, is that good news? I feel like that just kind of proves my point. Because if Mercury is retrograding, yeah, Mercury. Okay. Hold on. So Mercury will station retrograde while Mars is still in Leo. So we're at least in the clear there. But then Mars will enter Virgo while Mercury is still retrograde. And that is on July 28th. And then Mercury stations direct August 11th. So we'll obviously talk about this again when we get closer to that. But good to know that this is something we need to talk about later, because I totally forgot about that. All the Mercury retrogrades this year are in water signs. So, oh, bitch. We also, on the same day that Mercury stations, oh, I think I already knew this, that Mercury stations direct, We have a Venus Jupiter conjunction in Gemini. What do you mean? And no way. And this is, oh my God. And then a few days before that is the Mars Saturn opposition. Dog, so much going on. Oops. And that's after the full moon in Capricorn too. Lord have mercy. We gonna be busy. Ciao. Oh, I don't want to. I don't want to. So yeah, this I guess in summary. Mutable Madness Summer. Very disorienting. Potentially um having information either revealed or a bunch of people talking and speculating on something, and all of us trying to figure out what's true and what's not. And if something is true, then what does that mean about us and the people that we say we are? Or if it's not true, what does that mean about us and how we see ourselves and how we see how we see the country, how we see the people in leadership, how we see all of those things? Because if MAGA is your identity, and then you find out that Trump and RFK Jr. and all them are not actually trying to make America healthy again or whatever, and they don't actually give a fuck about you, and they add more tariffs, and then they start deporting white US citizens and all that kind of stuff, like I mean, then what? How you see yourself and all that kind of stuff starts to shift. And it also makes me think about, as I'm saying that out loud, it also makes me think about all of the conservatives who are complaining about the fact that like their liberal and left leaning friends and family members have walked away from them, and how they feel like, like y'all make politics your identity and y'all put politics above everything else, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you can say that about people on the left, or you can recognize the ways that you're actually doing that. And that's why people are leaving, because your politics are a statement about you and like your morals and your values and what you believe other people's rights are. So it could be a moment of like really having to confront that, not saying that they'll fold, not saying that they'll agree with it, but it could be a moment of them having to confront that within themselves again. And then sometimes that shit makes you violent. So like I don't love that. But I think in terms of it makes me really curious about this Venus Jupiter conjunction in Gemini. I'll have to think about that some more and how that changes a lot of things here. Um, and that Mercury retrograde in Gemini, I mean, that Mercury retrograde in Cancer is really important, I think, for all of that kind of stuff too. So those will all be things I have to look at more. I won't say too much about it. Um, Also just being mindful of my own negativity bias, but like I think starting Wednesday, hopefully we'll start to see aspects of Jupiter and Gemini come alive. And then maybe we can start to parse out what that will actually mean, especially while Mars is still in Cancer. Like that'll be a little bit of a foreshadow to whatever this Cancer stuff is, especially after having the Mars retrograde between Cancer and Gemini. I know I'm not saying a whole lot here because I'm just thinking out loud with y'all, but yeah, things to consider whenever we're thinking about the nodes. Hmm. Very, very curious. Very curious. Okay, what did y'all say in the chat? Hi, Sia. I never feel more Catholic than when I see not practicing Catholic than when I see evangelicals and traditional converts popping off about the Pope. Yeah, now we have a new American Pope. Rapture indicators. I'm curious how social media or usage of social media will change with this node cycle, if at all. That is also a good point. Especially AI on social media and algorithms and things like that. That was something that Nadine and I talked about last year with Jupiter and Taurus as the ruler of the North Node in Pisces. So I do wonder how that will shift. this year? Good question. Good question. Something to keep an eye on, because definitely, obviously, social media is curating a lot of our perceptions these days and the meanings that we make about information that we're receiving, and social media reflecting back to you the things that you tend to engage with the most as well. That's why Malcolm X said black people are not Americans but victims of America. Facts. Facts. And the people who were constantly trying to speak up about the truth of this country, to be like, hey, do y'all remember when we were only like 3/5 of a person? Y'all remember that? Y'all forgot? Well, this arresting everyone, even mayors shit is real. We're the baddie stuff. Yeah, we are the bad guys. Love the tangents. So grateful that you're here for my ADHD brain. Very quick moving. Mutable baddie here, and yes, I know. And I have Leo rising with Pisces in the 8th with Saturn in my moon there. Oh my goodness. So you really know. And then yeah, this being part of that. Woo! Definitely speaks to so much. I'm I'm sure that was really difficult to reckon with. And I'm sorry to hear it, that information was withheld from you for so long. Talk about new information literally changing your sense of self. I feel like the people who don't change with new information are stuck. I would agree. I would agree. Hearing this after a decade of rejecting Catholicism rings true for me. Okay. I have Pisces in the 8th, but no planets live there, and I often wonder about having basically no planets in mutable signs. Yeah, one of my best friends has that going on in her chart as well, and I do think it's interesting. Not exactly sure what it means, but it does make me wonder. Jupiter's running interference, yes. Is there another time when this aspect showed up previously? There probably is. Let's look at the last time Jupiter was in Gemini and see. Well, actually, let's look at the last time Saturn was in Pisces, because that would be the one to change the most. So yeah, that would have been not 30 days, 30 years. Thank you. Boop. Um oh no, 30 years ago Saturn was in Scorpio, because that was the year I was born. um and Saturn wouldn't have moved fast enough, so we have to go back 30 more years. Um Saturn in Pisces. Dang, Saturn Jupiter was in Scorpio again? Wait, what? Oh, that's why. What am I doing? Um Bye, Deb. I know I'm gonna start wrapping up here soon. I just want to see this last thing real quick. Happy Mother's Day again. Have a good day. Hugs to you. Um Tell me where. Yeah, I don't know. It would have been getting somewhere. Just put Saturn in Pisces so I can move on. Okay, yeah. Roughly almost 1966, but not quite, because Jupiter moved into Cancer. Yeah, Jupiter moved into Cancer. And so, yeah, we haven't had this particular configuration in a while. And then last time we had Leo and Aquarius nodes like this, I think was 80, 88? No. Is that right? Let me see. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't want to spend too much time trying to look it up, but I know people born in 1988 have the nodes like this in Leo and Aquarius. I think the last time we had Leo and Aquarius nodes in general was Obama's presidency. The end of Obama's presidency and the beginning of the first Trump era, because we had that big Leo eclipse in 2017. But I think they were flipped, which I mean kind of proves the point. Yeah, North Node was in Leo, South Node was in Aquarius. So then before that would have been 98. 1998 was the last time that we had the nodes like this. So I was close. I wasn't that close, but wait, no, even that's wrong because that was still North Node in Leo. Wait, what? Am I tripping? 2005. 2007. Final answer. 2007 was the last time that the North Node was in Aquarius and the South Node was in Leo. So like end of 2006, like November 2006 through sometime in 2008. But yeah, this particular configuration, yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't see it. So might be some different shit. Oops, feels like a bunch of lies coming from multiple directions and I want to duck out and hide. That's kind of what it's giving a little bit. A little bit. It could be a bunch of lies. It could also just be a bunch of people trying to tell the truth about the lies and not being taken seriously, being dismissed because everyone's skeptical of the truth. It's like when we're trying to talk about COVID, and I've even found myself kind of being like, what is the truth? Because now there's this whole conversation about where COVID originated. Like, did it actually start in the US? Did it actually start in China? You know, all of those kinds of things are already changing too. And we've gotten to a point where so many people just struggle to believe anything. I was watching two doctors debate on the Dr. Mike show the other day, debate about things like forever chemicals and PFAS and plastic microplastics and like Roundup and genetically modified foods versus organic foods, and they were arguing about all of that stuff. One doctor was kind of the more holistic natural medicine leaning doctor, and the other one was more of like a research immunologist, talking about how a lot of that stuff is taken out of context. A lot of the studies that come out about how much plastic we have in our bodies and all of that kind of stuff, like the um, actual studies that they did and the way that they were being performed kind of leads to misleading data that then gets kind of extrapolated and goes viral and blows up and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of busted my head wide open because the same doctor also talked about COVID and long COVID in a different episode and was trying to talk about it in a more nuanced way in terms of both extremes from, this is borderline like airborne HIV versus like this is totally not harmless, like a cold thing. She was like somewhere in the middle, acknowledging like, yes, there are some immune deficiencies caused by it, but at the same time, there are so many things that so many different factors that would lead someone to have more debilitating cases of long COVID versus other, and just all the other reactions. Of course, this was like 2 years ago that episode came out, so we've obviously learned more since then. But even I'm starting to have more questions about just like, yeah, what's actually going on, because we're at the point now that is 5 years in where we said we would start to actually know things. The virus has been around and people have been affected by it long enough to know like a little bit more about what the longer term consequences of having caught this virus are. And of course, we're seeing things like news anchors passing out on live TV and all of this other kind of stuff. So there's just so many variables that For me at this point, I'm like, even if we found out that it wasn't causing widespread immune damage the way that we think it is, things that do still cause widespread immune damage are things like PTSD and like chronic stress and um the unresolved grief and trauma of the pandemic itself and all of those things that like all of us were affected by. So I can understand why people say it's really hard to parse out. um it's hard to parse out and hard to find solid controls to conduct these studies because there are so many variables between people who did actually have like abnormal responses to the vaccine and like all these other things. So I have reached a point where I just have a lot of empathy for everybody, and a lot more understanding for the positions that people take towards COVID, towards the vaccine, towards long COVID, towards masking, towards whatever, because it was a really fucked up situation all overall for everyone in some kind of a way. And I'm even though don't agree with a lot of people's stories and narratives about that time, I understand where they're coming from in the sense that they're trying to rationalize a life-changing global event that was completely mishandled by leadership at the time. So, um this mutable stuff, man, that's why I use that word disorienting, because it really is like it makes you aware of how rigid your own narratives and stories are about something and how much that does influence your disposition towards other people and towards the world. And it can just suck sometimes to try and navigate all of that and figure out how to move forward and how to place things and how to make sense of stuff. But that's the work of this transit and the work of these eclipses as well, I would imagine. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts for now. We'll see how it all plays out and how things change as time goes on and we actually see things start to play out. But um I don't know. This was a fun chat. I feel like we still kind of talked about everything, even though we still kind of talked about everything in a roundabout way as far as the transits shifting this week. So love when that happens. Thank y'all so much for your questions and for your engagement in the chat as always. Very grateful for all of you and for your attention. And if you haven't liked the video, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, get notified every time I go live every Sunday. Um everyone, if you haven't joined my Patreon, also please join my Patreon. You can join as a free member, you can join at the $3 tier, the $5 tier. I'm definitely still exploring things with Patreon and what I'm doing with that, but starting to write more forecast interpretation type things, and I don't know, with my downtime at work. So mix mercury wait patreon.com/mix mercury on there as well. And if you could sign up for at least the $3 tier, it does go a long way for me. It does help me to pay some bills that come through my business account specifically. So I appreciate your support. It's a great way to show your appreciation for these lives as well. um I'll let y'all know if I reopen my books and what that will look like if I decide to do that anytime soon. Hopefully, I will have something in mind by the end of the month. So we will check in around then. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Um, and that no matter what your relationship is with your mother, that you feel seen in your experiences and in your truth of that relationship, and that someone in your circle is able to help hold some of that with you. And if you have a great relationship with your mom, I hope you have a wonderful day with her, celebrating her or your grandmother or whoever it is that mothered you. And that they also feel loved and supported. And if you are a person who mothers or has kids or is a pet mom or a pet parent or whatever, that you also find a way to celebrate yourself today too. So I will see you all again next week. Thanks for being here. Bye.